I never expected to start my morning watching an entire HOA board marching across my shoreline like they were invading foreign territory. But that's exactly what happened. And if they had known what I was hiding, if they had known I had documents locked in a fireproof safe that could destroy every claim they were about to make, they would have turned around and sprinted back to their golf carts. But they didn't. They stormed in with clipboards, cameras, and a level of confidence only people drunk on neighborhood power can possess. And the woman leading them, HOA President Monica, strutted down the dock in heels so loud they sounded like warning shots. "Sir," she barked, not even bothering with a hello, "this lake is our property. Every dock is HOA regulated, and your structures are unauthorized. They will be removed." I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't even blink. Why? Because the truth was so deliciously ironic that it almost felt cruel to let them continue. This wasn't their lake. This wasn't their property. And the docks they were threatening to tear down? Every single one of them, including the one they were standing on, belonged to me. Not metaphorically. Not emotionally. Legally. On paper. In ink. But I kept that to myself, watching as they measured boards, snapped photos, and whispered accusations like they were uncovering some kind of crime scene. Meanwhile, the sun was shining, birds were chirping, and I was seconds away from dropping a bombshell big enough to flip the entire HOA upside down. Monica turned to the group. "Write him up for non-compliance. These docks violate structural code, placement code, shoreline code." "Placement code?" I asked, pretending confusion. "Interesting." Her eyes narrowed. "You're not taking this seriously. These docks are illegally positioned on community property." Community property. I almost laughed. Because the truth that would blow their minds was something none of them had ever bothered to research. Not once. They assumed the lake was HOA owned simply because someone said it decades ago. No paperwork. No surveys. No deeds. Just arrogance. And that arrogance was about to cost them everything. I walked back to my house calmly, leaving them muttering behind me. Inside, I opened my safe. And there it was, the thick, sealed folder containing the original 1974 land acquisition documents, plus the updated 1992 ownership amendments. Documents proving, without question, that the lake and every dock built on it belonged to one person. Me. And now, it was time to show them. I walked back toward the shoreline with the folder tucked under my arm like a loaded weapon. The HOA board was still gathered on the dock, complaining loudly and confidently, completely unaware that every word they spoke was about to age like spoiled milk. Monica spotted me approaching and smirked. "Back so soon? Ready to sign the violation notice?" "Oh, I'm signing something," I said. "But not what you think." She rolled her eyes. "Sir, you've built unauthorized structures on HOA-owned water. There's nothing you can say to change that." I opened the folder slowly, savoring the moment. "Actually, there is." The group leaned in instinctively. Even the treasurer, who hadn't spoken once, took off his sunglasses in anticipation. I pulled out the first sheet, the original 1974 deed. A thick, stamped, notarized piece of paper that had survived 4 decades untouched. The kind of document that makes a lawyer's eyes sparkle and an HOA's blood run cold. "This," I said, holding it up so the sunlight hit it, "is the original land purchase record for this entire lake. And according to this deed, the previous owner not only bought the lake but secured exclusive rights to the shoreline structures." Several board members froze instantly. Monica scoffed. "That's ancient. The HOA gained ownership later." I shook my head. "No, they didn't." I pulled out the second sheet, the 1992 amendment. A document that updated ownership rights when the lake switched hands privately long before the HOA was even formed. "And this," I continued, "shows that those exclusive rights transferred to the next owner." She crossed her arms. And who exactly would that be? I smiled. Me. Silence. Pure, beautiful silence. The treasurer leaned closer. Are these real? Absolutely, I said. Registered, verified, and validated by the county registrar. That means every dock built on this lake sits on land I control. Including the dock you're standing on. Several board members reflexively stepped backward as if the wood under their feet had suddenly turned to lava. Monica shook her head harder now. This can't be right. The HOA bylaws clearly state. Bylaws, I interrupted, don't override property deeds. And these deeds say the lake is privately owned. I handed her one final sheet, a certified survey map marking the boundaries in permanent ink. Take a look, I said. The shoreline you're claiming? It's not HOA property. It never has been. Her face drained of color. I had finally detonated the truth. The moment the reality sank in, the HOA board reacted exactly how you'd expect a group of power-hungry rule enforcers to react when they realize they actually have no power at all. They panicked. Not the loud, dramatic kind of panic, but the quiet, frantic kind that happens when people are desperately trying not to look terrified. Monica's lips tightened, her eyes darting between the documents like she was searching for a hidden trapdoor that would save her pride. There must be some kind of mistake, she muttered. No mistake, I replied. Just decades of assumptions catching up with you. The treasurer stepped forward, sweating. Maybe we should, verify this with the county. You can, I said, but you'll find the exact same records I'm holding. Monica snapped out of her daze, clinging to the last scrap of authority she had left. Fine. Even if the lake is privately owned, the HOA still has regulatory power over structures in the community. I raised an eyebrow. Over structures built on HOA property. These aren't. One board member whispered to another, he's right, if the shoreline isn't ours, then the docks aren't under our jurisdiction. But Monica wasn't ready to surrender. People like her rarely are. She lifted her chin. Then we'll file a complaint. We'll escalate. We'll involve the architectural committee, the zoning office, I held up the final document in my folder, a letter from the county dated 6 years prior. This is from zoning, I said. Verifying that dock maintenance and placement decisions fall solely under the lake owner. They already confirmed it because I already asked. Another wave of silence hit them. Monica's confidence finally cracked. Wait, why would you have asked that years ago unless I knew this day would come? I said. Because I did. The truth was simple, the HOA had been getting more aggressive for years. More rules. More fines. More overreach. I had sensed this showdown was inevitable, so I prepared early. Now, standing in front of them, holding documents that dismantled every claim they had, I finally understood the look on their faces. It wasn't anger. It was defeat. But even defeated people can be dangerous when cornered. Monica squared her shoulders. We aren't finished. The board will meet. We will respond formally. I shrugged. Respond however you like. Just remember one thing. I pointed to the dock beneath us. You're standing on my property. And next time you come here, you'll need my permission. Her jaw dropped. The board scattered soon after, mumbling arguments, flipping through photos, trying desperately to salvage authority that had just evaporated. But the real storm was still coming. The HOA board retreated like a defeated army, but I knew better than to think the battle was over. Power-hungry people don't surrender quietly, they regroup, reorganize, and return with paperwork. And sure enough, 3 days later, a thick envelope appeared in my mailbox stamped with the HOA logo in oversized, unnecessary bold letters. Inside was a formal notice of intent to enforce compliance. I almost laughed. They demanded a meeting. They wanted explanations. They listed half a dozen sections from their bylaws as if sheer volume could magically undo actual property law. At the bottom, in Monica's aggressive handwriting, was a note: attendance mandatory. Mandatory. On my own land. So naturally, I attended. The meeting room was packed with homeowners, curious, anxious, annoyed, and the board sat at the front table like royalty preparing to make a proclamation. Monica cleared her throat dramatically, signaling the performance was about to begin. Thank you all for coming. We are here to address unauthorized dock construction on community property. I raised my hand immediately. Correction. Privately owned lake property. She shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass, but she motioned for me to speak. I placed my folder on the table, opened it, and spoke clearly enough for every homeowner in the room to hear. For years, I began, this HOA has operated under the assumption that the lake belongs to the association. But here are the county records, deeds, surveys, amendments, and zoning correspondence proving the opposite. Gasps rippled through the room. Homeowners leaned in, some whispering, some openly gaping as I held up each document one by one. The treasurer's voice cracked. Is this accurate? Oh, it's accurate, I replied. Every dock, every floating platform, every bit of shoreline access legally belonged to the previous owner. Then, in 1992, it transferred to me. Someone in the crowd shouted, then why were we paying HOA lake fees all these years? The room erupted. Shouting. Complaints. Anger not at me, but at the board that had been enforcing rules over property they never controlled. People demanded refunds, audits, explanations. Monica, red-faced and trembling, slammed her gavel in a futile attempt to regain control. Everyone calm down. This is a misunderstanding. No, I said, stepping forward. This is negligence. An overreach. And a reminder that bylaws don't override deeds. Then I delivered the final blow. From this day forward, anyone wanting to use the docks or modify them will coordinate with me, not the HOA. The room fell silent. For the first time since this entire saga began. Monica had nothing left to say. The days following the HOA meeting were unlike anything I had ever seen in our neighborhood. Word spread faster than wildfire, and by the end of the first week, everyone from the quiet couple on the cul-de-sac to the guy who always mowed his lawn at 6 a.m. knew the truth: the HOA had been regulating a lake they didn't own. And the neighbors were furious. People stopped me on my walks just to hear the full story. A retired engineer asked to see the survey map. A group of fishermen thanked me for finally exposing what they'd suspected for years. Even the lady who never waved at anyone suddenly greeted me like we were long-lost relatives. Meanwhile, the HOA office transformed into a pressure cooker. Homeowners lined up outside the door demanding answers, refunds, and accountability. Someone even taped a giant printout of the county deed to the HOA bulletin board with the words "Explain this" written in red marker. Monica tried to maintain normalcy, but it was clear she was losing her grip. Her once authoritative emails were now frantic, overly polite messages begging residents to remain calm during this transitional clarification period. No one bought it. And then came the emergency HOA meeting. I wasn't required to attend, but I did anyway. When I walked in, the room was overflowing. Homeowners crowded the walls, some standing on tiptoes just to see the front table where the board sat, flustered, pale, and sweating under the fluorescent lights. The energy was explosive, and for once, it wasn't directed at me. A man in a baseball cap stepped forward. Why were we charged lake fees if the HOA didn't own the lake? A chorus echoed, yeah. Answer that. Where did the money go? The treasurer opened his mouth, closed it again, then finally whispered, we didn't know. That only made things worse. Monica slammed her gavel. Enough. We are working on a comprehensive plan. A homeowner interrupted. No more plans. You were wrong, Monica. All this time, you were wrong. Someone else shouted, we want elections. New board. The room erupted in agreement. For once, the HOA wasn't in control. The people were. Monica tried to regain order, but every attempt was drowned out by demands for transparency, apologies, and accountability. Never in my life had I seen so many neighbors united on any issue, let alone this one. Finally, after almost an hour of shouting, the crowd settled enough for me to speak. I stood up slowly. I don't want revenge, I said. I just want honesty. And I want the HOA to stop pretending it owns something it never did. The room applauded. The board sat frozen. And I knew the fallout wasn't over. The morning after the explosive emergency meeting, the neighborhood felt different, lighter, almost energized. For the first time since I'd lived there, people walked their dogs with smiles instead of tight-lipped anxiety, and conversations at mailboxes weren't whispers of frustration about HOA fines. Instead, the talk was about possibility. Change. Freedom. But the HOA board? They were unraveling. Their email inbox was flooded with angry demands. Homeowners began requesting full audits, past financial statements, and explanations for every cent of lake maintenance fees they had paid over the years. And since the board had no documentation proving the lake belonged to them, they couldn't hide behind the usual excuses. By noon, I received a message from the HOA. Urgent, board requests a private discussion. I ignored it. An hour later, another. Please respond. This is critical. Ignored again. Finally, around 5 in the evening, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Monica stood there, no clipboard, no heels, no swarm of board members behind her. Just her, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. We need to talk, she said quietly, almost pleading. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. About what? She took a shaky breath. The board is collapsing. People want resignations. They think we lied. You did lie, I said. Maybe not intentionally at first, but when you learned the truth in that meeting, you still tried to double down. Her eyes flicked away. I was trying to protect the community. By pretending you owned property that wasn't yours. She rubbed her forehead. Look, I'm not here to argue. I'm here because, we need your help. That caught me off guard. My help? I repeated. Yes, she said. To stabilize things. People trust you now. They listen to you. If you clarified that the board didn't do this maliciously, maybe it would calm the situation. I crossed my arms. Why would I bail out the same people who tried to bully me off my own property? She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she sighed defeated. Because the neighborhood is falling apart. People are turning on each other. And whether we like each other or not, we both live here. Her honesty surprised me. For a moment, she didn't look like the power-hungry HOA president who marched onto my dock weeks ago. She looked like a tired person trying to hold together something that had already slipped through her fingers. Look, I said slowly, I'm not your enemy. But I won't protect you from consequences either. She nodded weakly. I understand. Then I added, if the HOA wants stability, it starts with accountability, not excuses. She swallowed hard. So, what happens now? I glanced toward the lake, the setting sun reflecting off the water I owned. That depends, I said. On whether the board is ready to face the truth. The next morning, before the neighborhood even woke up, my phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in from neighbors, screenshots of HOA emails, whispers of resignations, and rumors that half the board was ready to step down. The tension that had been simmering for weeks had finally reached its boiling point. But the real turning point came that evening. The HOA called one more urgent community assembly, and this time, nearly the entire neighborhood showed up. People brought lawn chairs, phones for recording, and enough frustration to power a small city. The board sat at the front like defendants awaiting their verdict. Monica looked exhausted, dark circles, shaky hands, and a stiffness that wasn't arrogance, but dread. She cleared her throat. "We appreciate everyone coming. The board would like to address concerns." Someone shouted, "Start with the refunds." Another voice followed, "And the false fines." A third, "What else have you been hiding?" The room exploded. The board flinched beneath the noise, but no one rushed to quiet it this time. The anger wasn't a spark anymore, it was a wildfire. Finally, the treasurer stood, trembling. "We admit we were mistaken about lake ownership." "Mistaken?" a homeowner snapped. "You charged us for years." We didn't know," he stammered. "We inherited incorrect records from previous boards." A woman in the front row raised her phone. "So you didn't verify anything? Not one deed? Not one survey? You just assumed?" The crowd roared again. That's when Monica stood, shoulders rigid. "Enough. I take responsibility for this. The lake issue happened under my leadership. I should have verified the ownership. I didn't. I accept that." Silence fell, not because she earned respect, but because everyone was waiting for the next bombshell. She turned to me. "And I want to personally apologize to you. I was wrong." The room inhaled sharply. I stepped forward, not triumphantly, not angrily, just truthfully. This was never about embarrassment. It was about honesty. About respecting homeowners. About not weaponizing rules you didn't understand. Dozens of heads nodded. "And now," I continued, "you all have a choice. Continue under the same leadership, or elect a new board that actually listens." A homeowner stood. Then another. Then a third. "I nominate a full re-election," someone shouted. The room erupted with applause so loud the windows rattled. Monica's eyes glistened not with anger, but with resignation. She whispered, barely audible, "So this is it?" I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. "Sometimes," I said quietly, "truth changes everything." The vote was inevitable. And by the end of the night, the HOA board as we knew it, was gone. The night the HOA board was voted out, the neighborhood didn't just feel relieved, it felt reborn. Conversations that once carried irritation and resentment were now filled with hope, curiosity, and a strange sort of excitement. People lingered outside long after the meeting ended, discussing possibilities like kids dreaming about a future where anything was possible. But I didn't expect what came next. The following morning, as I stepped outside to grab the newspaper, I saw 3 neighbors waiting on my driveway. They weren't angry or demanding. They looked determined. "Can we talk?" asked Mrs. Patterson, the retired engineer who had studied the survey map with laser focus earlier in the week. "Sure," I said cautiously. She exchanged glances with the others before speaking. "We want you to run for the new board." I nearly laughed. "Me? I'm not a politician." "You don't need to be," said Mark, the guy notorious for mowing at 6 a.m. "You're the only one who stood up to them. The only one who brought proof. The only one who was honest." I shook my head. "Owning the lake doesn't make me a leader." "No," Mrs. Patterson replied, "but integrity does." Over the next few hours, it became clear this wasn't just their idea. As I walked around the neighborhood, people stopped me to offer support, encouragement, even homemade cookies as bribes for my potential candidacy. One teenager on a skateboard yelled, "Please run." "I'm so tired of fine letters," and nearly crashed into a mailbox. The momentum was overwhelming. By noon, a group of homeowners had unofficially declared me the community's top candidate, and by evening, someone had created an online poll showing an absurd number of votes in my favor. But not everyone was happy. Just before sunset, Monica appeared at the edge of my driveway again. She looked different this time, not angry, not defeated, but conflicted. "So it's true," she said quietly. "They want you to take over." I shrugged. "I didn't ask for it." "No," she said, "but maybe that's why they want you." She hesitated before continuing. "Listen, despite everything that happened, the board isn't easy. People judge you. People blame you. People expect things from you. And once you're in charge, they forget you're human." Her warning wasn't malicious, it sounded almost protective. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I spent years doing it wrong," she admitted. "And I don't want you to make the same mistakes." For a moment, we stood there in silence, two people who had been enemies just weeks earlier, now simply neighbors. "Whatever you decide," she said finally, "make sure it's for the right reasons." She walked away, leaving me alone with a decision I never expected to face. That night, I couldn't sleep. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, while my mind spun through every conversation, every demand, every expectation people had suddenly placed on me. Hours earlier, I was just the guy who exposed the HOA's mistake. Now, the entire community wanted me to lead them. To rebuild what had been broken. To fix problems I hadn't created. But as midnight crept closer, I realized something important. Power wasn't what they wanted from me. They wanted trust. Something the old board had lost long before any of this began. The next morning, I walked down to the lake, the soft ripples brushing against the docks, my docks. The sun reflected in soft, golden shards across the water, almost like it was waiting for an answer to. As I stood there, I heard footsteps behind me. Thinking about running. It was Mark, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one without asking. "Thinking," I replied. "Not sure about running." He nodded. "People think you'd be good at it?" "I'm not a politician," I said again. "You're also not a bully. That's all we really want." I took a sip, staring out at the water. "What if I mess it up? What if I make it worse?" Mark chuckled. "Worse than charging lake fees for a lake we didn't own? You've already beaten the record." I had to laugh a little at that. A few minutes later, more neighbors joined us, Mrs. Patterson, then the Fisherman brothers, then the young couple from the corner house. Before long, there was a small crowd gathered on my shoreline, all waiting quietly. Not pressuring. Not demanding. Just waiting. Mrs. Patterson spoke softly. "None of us want you to fix everything alone. We want someone who leads with fairness. Someone who listens. And," added the fisherman with the baseball cap, "someone who knows how to handle a dock." That got another laugh. For the first time, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt supported. Still, the decision was big. Bigger than any document I'd shown. Bigger than any confrontation with the HOA. Finally, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. "If I stepped up, would you all help me?" A chorus of yes, nods, and determined expressions answered immediately. Not hesitation. Not uncertainty. Unity. At that moment, I realized something: leadership wasn't about titles or authority. It was about responsibility, and I'd already taken that on the day I opened my safe and pulled out those documents. I turned to them all, heart steady, mind clear. "All right," I said. "I'll run." Cheers erupted across the lake, echoing off the water like applause from the world itself. And just like that, everything changed again.